Alright, I am just here to rant about the Rell changes coming up, explain why I don't like them, and why I feel as if Riot is just entirely missing the point of the champion. Uh, so, for starters, I've been playing Rell since season 2022, and when I initially started playing her, I was playing Jungle Kindred for the most part, and was kind of getting sick of, all these assassins and crap that were being played, and my support's not really doing anything. Uh, my team's constantly having no hard CC, and not really having much agency inside of my matches as a result of it. I'm not the best jungler player, but, constantly improving and whatnot. So I decided to take the macro knowledge that I'd gained from my time playing Kindred and translate it to support. In terms of decision making for the champion that I wanted to play in that support role, I looked for improving macro. This means that I do want a farm mobility. I want a reason to be mobile, to keep myself active, and being able to make plays at all phases of the game. Secondary, I wanted something to teach me hard lessons. Was the that okay? I wanted to basically learn through, punishment in my time playing. Uh, Same reason I was playing Kindred is before going to jungle, I was, playing mid lane for the most part. When I went to jungle and I was like, hey, what do I want to play? How about something that basically throws me into the mess, punish me when I'm performing poorly, teach me other skills that can go elsewhere. I chose Kindred. I sucked with marksman at the time. Left click attack move kind of helped with that. But uh, you know, playing Kindred at least gave me a really strong baseline for how to understand your opponent's movements throughout the map and all that. And also gave me at least some power in helping my teammates, the very strong utility with her ultimate, knowing when to use her ultimate, when not to use her ultimate, so you're not just punishing your team for your own poor decisions. With Rell, this came into being with her powerful engagements because, when you crashed down, you had low move speed before any of the changes after I started playing her. Her base move speed upon landing was around 250, I believe it was. Might have been a bit lower initially, but then yeah, because Rell Crashdown also is very punishable of an ability with anything that does knockdown or displacement or knockups, whatever, any of those effects can interrupt it. Uh, it kind of had me focus a bit more on, and this kind of came a bit later in my time of learning the champion, because, I normally don't really use high mobility champions at that. So knowing things that affect dashes wasn't a skill that I actually had to know because Kindreds can be stopped by most any sort of hard CC. But playing her gave me the sense of knowing more about the enemies around me. Because her damage was more early game focused, it helped give me a lot of power in the early game as well. But again, Rell can be punished on bad mistakes, just like Kindred can be punished on bad macro plays. Being completely denied stacks from jungle monsters if you don't understand their timers or how the marking system works. Denied stacks from champion kills just by setting up ganks poorly or not swapping your marks in time, stuff of the sort. And then in support, roam timers are also things that you get punished on a lot, but it's a lot of support champions that get punished on that, wave management, things of the sort. Rell had tools at her disposal to kind of assist with wave management. She had tools to assist with uh, combating in lane, poke damage against your opponents, like against Janna and champions like her. You actually had a tool at your disposal because her Q range was actually pretty long. At the time when Janna's attack range didn't get that buff, but it didn't really get any compensation nerfs for, uh, Rell's Q range was slightly longer than Janna's auto attack range. And, because Rell's E has a built-in heal with it, oftentimes you just outright win trades. Because Rell had a shield when dismounted, and, Janna would usually shield herself for the bonus damage when she's poking. Usually it's the stupid ones that do that, but most of the time when people pick Janna into Rell, they are one of the stupid ones. Very rarely will you actually see the really good ones that actually roam a lot and beat you in map-wide macro rather than trying to beat you in lane and generally losing at that. Okay, so, lane interactions is another thing that I like or liked using Rell for. The bulk of her kit, as well as what she could output, how you can control it, kind of taught you how to get, combat, maintain bush control. The niche mechanics, which it's kind of obvious stuff, but it's still there in terms of the normal attack mounts up normal attack for killing wards. It's basically the same thing as Leona ward killing with normal Q normal. That was there to supplement when your AD carry was kind of just walking back and forth and didn't want to use a single auto attack on whatever ward got put down in the bush, so you can at least maintain that pressure. Compounded with the damage for a passive, gave her really strong early game strength. I very, very much value the early game, which Rell having those nuances to her. She beats shield, she gets those little heals, she had really high base damage values thanks to her passive on her normal attacks. And her damage values are pretty, like, her base damage values are pretty okay for the early game ranks. Past, like, level 7 or something, they didn't really mean much, but in the most important part of the game in many matchups, you had what mattered. And then I needed strong utility and crowd control was another big thing. As I said, when I jungled, it upset me that my support players never brought anything with, like, reliable hard crowd control. Reliable being the key word. So when we ran into champions like Master Yi, when we ran into champions like Fiora, Gwen, other things of the sort, we wouldn't just be sitting ducks constantly because everyone just decided to pick a 1v9 champion that had little to no power on their own to actually stop these plays coming in, especially versus like champions like Rengar and Kha'Zix. I want to put a stop to that, Zed. And yeah, I needed that hard crowd control to pull enemy champions out of their dashes, whether they're going in or jumping out. That was important to me. Liability in late game agency. So what I mean by this is the biggest strength that Rell has is her ability to coin flip in the late game. Is it healthy? Or, well, because I'm talking about original Rell here. Was it healthy? It wasn't healthy, but it was insanely freaking strong because the range and size of her old Crashdown was massive. Relatively on par with the radius of Magnet Storm as it is. Because of that, there are insanely huge plays that you're able to make of it, and, you know, biggest freaking, biggest agency values that you can get out of most champions in the game at the time. Especially help because of what Attract and Repel provided to her. You know, you go in, you press W, E, and then it stuns the enemies so they can't respond, and then you press R, and it pulls them in so they can't respond for the rest of the duration that you're falling down on top of them. Thing is, though, that was... the combined CC duration was close to what it is now. I forget the exact numbers, however. But I'm admitting it wasn't the healthiest thing in the game. It was strong though, and it was good, and people didn't want to abuse it for the reason of her dismount speeds. Now, that's the thing that Riot looked at for the most part when doing this Rell midscope. Because, hold on. So, in order to have a strong kit, Rell needed a bunch of drawbacks to, like, you know, hold in her power. Because otherwise, you know, she would be too strong. What were those drawbacks? So, her Q only dealt... Alright. Her Q only dealt full damage to the first target. It also only applied passive to the first target. Thing is, her passive could not apply to epic monsters, so she couldn't deal her passive bonus damage to epic monsters as well. It still persists like that to date, but it could apply to minions, and unfortunately her passive damage wasn't applied in her Q strikes, which is something that would have been nice to have in quality of life. Not quite sure why they withheld it. Would have made her feel even nicer. But it is what it was. The damage of her Q was extremely low at that, though, especially if, like, you maxed it last for some reason. Like, when I initially started playing her, her E actually gave cooldown per rank. Her W didn't, but it gave stats and damage, like, a lot more shield than it does now per rank, and more damage than it does per rank at the moment. Alright, but hold on. Keep on track. So, her Q dealt full damage to the first target. However, another thing paired with her Q was the healing from her E. But the thing is, the healing from her E was only applicable when near an ally. So, Q heal only when bound to an ally. This was something that if Riot wanted to actually make it so that Rell felt good to play when you're not near your teammates, this is something they could have moved to not require ally binding in order to function. So the reason why her heal felt weak before is for a couple reasons. First off, it works in junction with her crash down most optimally because, you know, just like old Karma, when you're low on health and you crash down, you get a shield. You have health that is very what's the word? Deceptive in that. You know, when you crash down, you gain the bonus armor, bonus magic resistance, and then you got this heal. If you do that when you're low health, your heals are going to be bigger. If you max Q first, your heals are going to be even bigger. If you max it second, it'll still be decently sized. Most efficient when you're fighting multiple people, because usually if you aimed it right, you would hit 2 people, which means that you would get, like, what, 6% missing health healing or whatever, plus the flat value, and actually add up to some pretty decent numbers when you can hit multiples. But because you required an ally bound to you for it to proc, which, again, it doesn't quite make sense why you even needed someone bound other than the limitation of her power. Uh, you know, they got rid of that, but they also didn't give us anything in exchange for that. So as a result of the midscope, she lost a considerable amount of durability in combat mid to late game. So she has no survival. This is still true right now. This is still true for what's to come. That loss of any sort of combat durability outside of her crashdown is like pain, like so much pain to her. And for whatever reason, right, thinks that the passive changes like were so strong to merit absolutely nuking the amount of numbers that she gets from her steals makes up for it just because it can stack now. Okay, so yeah, full damage to the first target, only applies passive to the first target, can only heal when bound to an ally. Those are two restrictions. Both of them could have been alleviated, but we don't know why. Like I understand the passive applying to the first target. Like they could have left that one perfectly fine, but the damage reduction would have at least been nice to like I don't know, scale it with level perhaps. Right. So yeah, that one is understandable because her passive used to steal like what was it, 15% resistances or something, or maybe 12%. I don't know, somewhere around that. But it also had a base value of steal that was much higher than it was now. I think it scaled from like 5 to 8 or something, which is generally more than you'd get full stacks in almost any phase of the game versus the vast majority of the roster currently. So yeah, they could have made her Q damage scale with level for targets past the first. That would have helped her have the kind of toned down early game that it provided while giving her actual output in the late game, because it's especially painful. Oh, and something else they could have done with the passive application though, which would have been nice, is applying the passive from her Q to the first champion hit before considering other targets. Uh, you could also possibly include monsters in this as well, but leave the damage blocking from the minions potentially with like an exception because there's a certain way that she uses her or used her Q back then. So yeah, if they made it so her Q would apply her passive to champions before others, it would help her maintain it in combat easier because back then her passive would refresh on all the targets it applied to every time you reapplied it to a champion, but like because late game when you crash down enemies you're kind of CC'd for ages, you're oftentimes going to be getting hit by CC a lot because you don't even apply your passive except for like the first champion that you queue after you crash down. Uh, it's going to fall off before you get out of the CC chain if you even survive it. Uh, Having that consideration would at least be useful at certain parts. Like in the early game, even if they had to tone down the damage of her passive to or the stealing of her passive in the early game to make up for that, it's honestly kind of fine because again, she was strong before. I'm not denying that, but some people think that she was bad before, and I am denying that. Okay, so I got her two Q things out. So her passive, and this is just a quick note. Uh, this actually got changed in the PvE based off of feedback. Which thanks Raptor for listening to this feedback. Her passive fell off whenever enemies died with it on them. Like, ideally it should wait the full duration before it falls off, but, it just dropped off instantly. I don't know if that was intended or not. I can only assume that with it being on for so long, but them also ignoring Rell for the longest time, they just kind of didn't realize it was a thing. Okay, so Q drawbacks are done. Gonna move on to, I'll start with Crashdown. So, Crashdown's weaknesses. It had very variable speeds with where you cast it from. So it was slower to land. If you cast it too close to yourself, this is part of the thing that made it kind of feel bad for some players more than likely. And this is one of the changes that happened during the mid-scoping process that was made to kind of smooth it out, making a relatively static speed for her jump and the slide, but the slide was also improved during the PvE because it felt like garbage using the old speeds with how full tilt is functional. Again, another thing that Raptor listened to, which again, I appreciate. As much as I don't like the mid-scope, I do appreciate when the feedback is taken and listened to. So yeah. This, I'm pretty sure, was intentional. And her sliding speed of her crashdown was also ridiculously slow. However, that's kind of a double-edged sword because it means that hitbox of her slide was also much slower. Which means that, when enemies are dashing into you or there's a Zanya's in effect or anything of the sort, it's just that much longer of a hitbox for you to hit the enemies. Them removing it, again, is kind of a double-edged sword. They probably think that speeding it up takes away from part of her power budget. But I kind of disagree. I feel like speeding it up would be a bit neutral, if not taking some out of her power budget. Like, yes, she can move sooner, but what's she gonna do when she crashes down, Alright, and then when she's dismounted, she moved really slowly. A lot of people give it this really stupid nickname that I don't want to say because they're idiots. And this is the biggest thing that added room to her power budget to make room for all of the other strength that she had in her kit. Them removing the caps on the dismounted move speed more and more draws a lot of strength from the rest of her kit, which makes it to where her crashdown is as low range compared to before as it was, why it's as thin compared to before as it was, and also more than likely why they took the damage part of her passive off. Now, they adjusted her dismounted move speed twice in the time before they mid-scoped her when I was still playing her. One of the times they increased the base move speed by like 20, and then the second one they improved it by like 30 or something like that. Now, the thing is, what they overlooked and they didn't touch is they never touched her dismount move speed cap. So even though her dismounted move speed was buffed up to like 300 or like 280 at rank 1, the cap was still like 290. And if you bought like boots on your first back, your move speed was no different until you hit like level 5 or something like that. And Riot was like, yes, this is the buff that we needed to make people feel more comfortable using Rell. Because they don't like her dismount move speeds, we're going to make her move a bit faster. Now, with these changes, Rell main win rates went up, but they're not the changes that we needed. We don't care about her move speed. She is not a champion that projects fast move speed. When she's dismounted, she's slow. When she's mounted, she's faster. She's not fast, she's faster than when she's dismounted. She should not be Hecarim. She should not be Kled. She should not be Rammus. Thing is, she's not really either of those because her move speed steroid isn't even nearly as strong as them. At most, they're like Hui. If even. So yeah. Oh, actually, gonna move back to her crashdown. So, I'm not actually sure if this is attributed to her power budget. So, because her crashdown is as it is, and because it's a two-part ability, it's effectively got twice the cooldown built into it. So, you know, because in order to crash down again, you have to mount up and then crash down. And the thing is, it's not always immediately a good time to mount up in practical play. Usually, you'd be looking for an enemy ability to be used, or you'd actually be looking for an offensive play to be done, because, you know, the mount up move speed was really good for her. Ever since the midscope, they kind of gutted it, and her mount up move speed feels useless now. They've basically made it into what full tilt is at this point, but I think it's even still slower. Alright. W2 drawbacks. This would be mount up. No bonus move speed less towards champions. Nah. I don't think anything for her mount up took anything, like, caused her power budget to go down at all. Or to pull anything from her power budget. The most thing that her mount up likely drew from the power budget was being a hard CC displacement. But it's basically moving from a, like, what was it, about 16-second cooldown of AoE displacement, and then you unlock a 16-second cooldown single target displacement, whose primary upside is being really good against dashes, you know? Alright. And then moving on to E drawbacks. So, her E is where a lot of other issues stem from, especially from casual Rell players. Usually a lot of the actual Rell main players, issues with E stemmed from the bugs surrounding it. I'm just gonna include the bugs as a big one, because Riot left it for so long that maybe they attributed to the power budget. So I'm just gonna put it there for, you know, flavor. So, E has a lot of things good about it. First off, being usable during crashdown. Being of her 4 CC, her 4 hard CCs, it is one of 2 that does not require her to use mobility. So stuff like Poppy doesn't stop it. And also, its range is huge. Probably one of the largest range hard CCs that existed in the game. Now, what did it need to counterbalance this? It required a 3-second lockout on cast. Oops, on binding. Whenever you rebound to an ally, if you rebound to the same ally after being out of the radius from binding to them for longer than, like, I think it was like 2 seconds or something, you would have a full 3-second lockout on casting the ability until you came into range of them. Now the issue with the bug is that lockout would sometimes forced cooldown. It would set her E onto a full cooldown until the person you originally bound to would walk back to you. Or if you walked back to them and then would rebind to them, you would have the 3-second lockout, and then you'd be able to rebind onto someone else if it didn't bug out again! So there's that. I will put the Q heal. Because the Q heal being tied to the E makes it so her level 2, going W and Q, wouldn't be as strong. But usually you would go WE at level 2. But, you know, there are niche situations. So yeah, her Q is tied to her E rank. Not the effects of the Q, just the Q being able to heal it all. So it has the lockout, has the Q being tied to it, cannot rebind when on cooldown. This is another big one that would have been nice quality of life to have, but my assumption is that, yet again, this is probably part of what was allowing your power budget be what it was. Which, you know, I can live with. But sometimes there are situations where you kind of needed to swap it in combat, but extremely finicky. I'm not sure if this was intentional with the power budget, but basically the issue with this was if you were in combat and you pressed your E, attempting to bind it to a different ally, sometimes it would go off rather than binding it to that ally. I'm just putting hard to move binding, but you can understand that when you have an ability that's supposed to help allies survive, right? And help you peel them, if you can't send that ability to them reliably, and instead it, you know, casts and sets itself on that freaking 14-second cooldown in that mid-late game state, not accounting for ability haste, of course, then, you know, it kind of, it's pain. So yeah, you can't swap your bindings easily when you're combat. Enemies can see it. Enemies can see it in certain circumstances, but it's kind of hard to tell when they like when they can see the tether or not. Also, allies can see it. Allies can see it, but they, if I recall correctly, they can't really see the circle AoE around themselves. And it's very, very translucent in their perspective. So sometimes they can end up messing up a good stun. Now, those difficult of use things are skill issues, and they take time to learn. The only times they're not skill issues are when you have an Ezreal or Lucian that constantly move out of the stun radius when you're trying to make a play. But again, even that, I would still attribute to a skill issue, because you should be crashing down in a certain direction to kind of alleviate from that. But, you know, if they go a way that you're not expecting, then, you know. But yeah, because her E is still an instant stun that can be cast during her crash down, it needs weaknesses. There's some quality of life that could have been thrown in there, but overall, unless they took power from elsewhere, she would have been too strong. So moving on to her ultimate. on its own, it is the worst ultimate ability in the game. If you cast it without any other ability accompanying it, it's effectively doing nothing in most scenarios. There are some that it works out, like, you know, Zac trying to slingshot away, you press R. Rengar trying to jump to one of your allies, you press R. Any enemy charging up anything, you press R. Channeling anything, you press R, it stops them. But that drag, until, it's useful until they get, like, you know, tier 1 boots. In most situations. Sometimes it needs to wait till tier 2 if they're like a really slow champion that has no mobility. But usually it's tier 1 boots. And then they can walk out of it. It doesn't apply her passive. Doesn't apply passive procs at all. It's a magnet storm. Her passive is stealing armor and crap, but doesn't do anything. Okay? Other than, again, locks enemies inside of your Crashdown CC. But, you know, you can also pair it with her Attract and Repel. You know, something that I would commonly do versus Poppies and whatnot would just be R and then E. It would pull them in and stun them for the period of time. And then because Glacial proc, they can't really move all that well. They're an easy target for your ally to take out. Worked out very well! Poppy wasn't really an issue back then. But, yeah. Those were a lot of things thrown into her. Oh, yeah. Another passive thing. Why did it drop back down? Yeah, her passive wasn't applied by abilities. Other than Q. Other than Q. Okay. So you have all this stuff taken from her, like, from her usability. Oh, wait, hold up. Her attack speed was around 0.54 every second. But the thing is, the damage for her passive, again, offset this. But it also made mid to late game applying her passive a massive pain in the butt. Even though you could get her Q to around a 3-second cooldown reliably if you maxed it first or second, which again, most players, even after her last pre-midscope changes that flattened her E cooldown, most players would still max Q last, and then complain about the weak healing. And it... Alright, another thing that Rell had built in was a horrible mounted attack animation. The only thing that made it good would be the dismounted auto mount up, flip, and then auto attack after that. Because that auto actually came off at a decent rate. You know, good stuff. Now, the things that Rell had to her, she worked insanely well with Glacial. Because you would bind it to any mobile champion, they jump onto an enemy, you press E, they get a slow, enemy gets damage reduction towards your ally. So good. Countless fights won because of it, countless picks acquired because of it. Also, if that happens, it slows the enemies, gives you time to get up to them, and then crash down onto them. That's one of the biggest reasons that I'm constantly fighting people about Rell does not need move speed. She needs an ability to, like, keep enemies locked down rather than moving to enemies. She wants to pull people to her or hold them from escaping her. like Shen Q, for example. But again, it's lost to the void whenever I freaking bring this up. And Riot doesn't want to listen to it either, despite, you know, a magnetism-focused champion. And, you know, Full Tilt is all about leaving your teammates in the dust except for one ally to go into the enemy and die. Because that's what Riot thinks her playstyle is, but she's supposed to be fighting with. Alright. Next up. Alright. Around this time, Eclipse was a really strong item. Divine Sunder was a strong item. And you know, you would brawl with your teammates against these enemies. They'd get shields, you'd Q, heal them up, they'd pop out of the shields, they'd attack, your Q would come back up, you Q again, repeat. And, I mean, in the meanwhile, your allies are the ones mostly taking the damage. As soon as the enemy notices that you're near them, they'll kind of swap to you, they'll do a little dance, and then you make them kind of, you know, regret their mistake of having done anything when you're existing near them. Whatchamacallit. So, dismounted shields plus resistances plus stolen resistances amped by missing HP heals. This is really good because whenever she dismounts, she gets a shield that gives her effective health. Whenever she seals resistances, that's good because it gives her effective health. Whenever she Q'd enemies, it was good because the resistances provided by the passive plus her innate increases gave her health. And not only that, whoever she was bound to also gained significant effective health because she was transferring, or, well, providing them the increased armor and magic resist as well. And it's something that we lost by giving move speed instead. Rell became someone that was selfless and became selfish. She doesn't provide anything for her team except move speed right now, and that's for one ally. And I don't want to be a two-man team. I want to be a five-man team. I want to work with everyone. Not just for myself. Not just for my carry. I want to be able to fight at all phases of the game. I don't have to be strong. I don't have to be Ornn levels of damage. I don't have to be Cassante levels of damage. I just need to not be 20% behind the pack. Like, Rell damage is a joke. Most of her damage output is usually breaking shields. But because her current Q cooldown has such a long, like, period of time that you have to wait, the shield breaking is brought down. Hold on. I'm gonna move on to. Yeah. The canvas size here. What? Do. Okay. Alright. So, moving on to what the midscope did. This is, from my perspective as a Rell player with over, like, 700 games in ranked with her. Or, well, actually, it's probably more like around 600 games in ranked, but, like, maybe 1,000 games, if not more, because both seasons that I actively played where I did, like, 100 to 200 normal matches before jumping into ranked, but can't really get those stats, so whatever. If you want to look it up, freaking... There you go. I'd be surprised if anyone got this far, but if you did, thank you for listening to my rant. Okay, so, moving on. The everything that was pulled from her kit in order to feed into what she had. So, her passive, lost damage, less resistances stolen, less base less min resistances stolen. Alright, I'm just gonna include the things that were lost at the moment. Okay, Q. Lost heal with her E. Her cooldown was significantly increased. As I said, you used to be able to get down to like around 2 to 3 second cooldown based on your items. And assuming you maxed Q first or second, because usually you wouldn't max your third ability at all. Lost cast time. It went from 0.3 seconds to 0.5 seconds when PB hit live, then they dropped it to 0.4 seconds. Lost range. It went, like, around 150 distance further than it was. Forced movement, which I'm pretty sure they're draining that from, actually, because it's draining from or since I believe it's draining from her kit strength, I'm gonna leave it out of this bit. It did preserve the shield break though, so that's nice. W. Lost its passive. Lost range. Lost width. Lost, actually, because I believe the gaining speed, because I think that Riot considers that a full-on kit, like, power injection, I'm leaving that out. Whatchamacallit. Okay. Remount. Move speed. Nuked. E. Lost instant stun. Lost heal, Q. Lost range. Stun. The damage is about the same, but it's still lower. And presently the cooldown is about the same. When the changes go in effect, the cooldown will be 4 seconds lower at max rank than it is now, but you're going to be leveling at second, or they want you to level at second. So you lost an instant stun, you lost the range of the stun, Lost ally resistances are okay. Alright, so this is going to be where power budget got injected. Okay, so her lost damage went to dismounted attack speed. Initially, they made it scale from 10% to 30% based on rank, but then they flattened it out to 30% because they saw how useless it was, and the loss of the damage to the dismounted attack speed did not make up for it. That was the vast majority of the bulk of damage loss before the damage reduction on all of Rell's abilities. Both of those were adjusted because, or both less resistance is stolen and less min resistance is stolen, or because she can stack it now, was the logic. Which, you know, the reason that, alright. Lost heal. Increased base stats. They increased her armor and resistance values a bit, and her scalings a bit. Lost cooldown length because of stun. Lost cast time because of stun. Lost range because of stun. Because it lost the range, they added forced forward movement. To, you know, make the feeling happen. But the result of the forced movement is, I was gonna say accidental tower damage, but it's more so accidental danger zones. In which, before, there were moments where you could Q to poke, but now when you attempt to do that, you'll generally put yourself at a risk that you wouldn't before as a result of it. Alright. So, the forced movement, again, I am fairly certain that Riot thinks that the forced movement is a boon to Rell, not a loss. So the forced movement makes it so that what was I gonna say? I'll come back to it when I remember. Lost movement speed passive to move to E. Lost range. The loss of range on W is because of full tilt. Loss of W width. Was to tone down her kit strength. Remount move speed was lost because of full tilt. Lost instant stun because of full tilt. I already did the... Just slap that there. Lost range. Oh, wait. Okay, lost instant stun in favor of a half-second cast time, dropped to a 0.4-second cast time Q stun. Lost stun range to reduce it. And width, actually. Because remember, Rell's old stun for Attract and Repel was not only the area between both units, but also the area around them, almost equal to the size of Magnet Storm. I don't know where the power for the width loss went, though. Lost early game damage for percent health damage. Lost resistance share in favor of move speed. Now, remember, Remount does still have a move speed boost, but it may as well not be acknowledged at this point because of how freaking meaningless it is. Or wait. Where Magnet Storm can apply a single stack of her passive. Once per skill. And then there's, you know, the recent bug fix, even though it was intended. Except for E and Q. Or E and Auto. Those are still one, despite being two actions in a single frame. Okay, so... do I remember the forced movement thing? Oh, yeah. Her Q flash was changed from being able to face the direction their cursor was facing at the time of Q's cast, the way that it works for champions like Brand, the way that it worked before the midscope, to how it works now because of the bug that occurred that kind of made it hyper jank and focus on a certain point that I forget the specifics of. It changed to a manner of her maintaining the same direction, akin to Renata Ultimate. Oh wait. Alright. So, I'm gonna bold everything that I'm pretty sure takes the absolute most of her power budget in this. Full tilt. Full tilt. You being a stun. Full tilt. You being able to be flashed. Dismounted attack speed. And everything that I feel was important to Rell that was lost, I'm going to underline. Lost her passive damage. Lost the minimum resistance steal. Lost the heal. Lost the cooldown. This got fixed, so mostly going to... I'll just italicize it. This changes entirely for, it being moved back to W is entirely to help her early game, but her early game is not going to be a good state. The range was important. The width isn't as important as the range. The thing is, about the freak changes, if he wants to hit the duration of the knockup and then what's mitigable, he's doing it wrong. Because the crash should be the full knockup duration that it is now. Just reduce the slide to a stun. The crash shouldn't be changed. Because hitting that circle is the thing that should be representative that makes the engage good. The slide is usually for a follow-up and doesn't project the same impact that the crash does. The crash width being toned down is also fine from the midscope thing. Like, it's fine even if they pad it down a bit more. If they return the range and move her E to something that actually matters, then we're good. Like, retool it into an actual functional ability, please. The instant things. I don't believe that Rell passive persisting after death is something that attributes to her power budget, though. I don't remember what I said. But whatever. Okay. So, yeah, they injected her with attack speed. They gave her the stun on Q. They gave her full tilt. And they took out her resistance share. They took out her W range. They took out a lot of her cooldowns from Q. They made it so she can't steal as much resistances, and she lost early game damage. A lot of early game damage. Those are the things that needed to be helped with. But instead they gave her move speed. A lot of move speed. Like, how do I make them understand that in no way should Rell's kit have ever been forced to be a focus on move speed? What she needs is her R to be a meaningful ability. And I know that Freak is working towards doing this because of how he tooled it so they could potentially increase its range and its drag strength. But the thing is, that's meaningless still if they don't address the root of the freaking problem. So, full tilt pulls too much power from her kit. Q stun pulls too much power from kit. Oh yeah. They put too much value into her passive stacking. Way too much value. So, full tilt pulls too much because it's move speed, which she doesn't need. Again, she needs to be faster while mounted. Not fast. Fast? And like, if they wanted to go a full cavalry thing or whatever, technically a mounted form should be combatively stronger than a dismounted, right? So why not convert, like, her passive, when she's mounted, to something pseudo-dead man's plate, you know? Make it so she would have to move for a bit while mounted, and, yeah, while being mounted, to gain her additional move speed. It could work, yeah, it could work like a mini dead man's, but get progressively more of the move speed going towards her budget as she's moving around. And a bit of slow resistance, just a bit. Uh, but they don't need full tilt to exist. It has no reason to exist. When she crashes down, focus on the crash down. Survival. Interactive. I know that this is a difficult thing for Riot to think about in modern champion design, but champions that are interactive are fun. Smolder, freaking boring. ASO rework, boring. Bring old one back. I'd be happy, even though I never saw it. They'd be happy, and them being happy would make me happy because low play rate champions deserve to get respect. Whatchamacallit? Not an enchantment bot. I don't want to be Lulu when I'm Rell. I don't care about the move speed boost from full tilt. It's pointless. I want aggression. I want freaking synergy within her kit. She gains resistances when she is down. She should heal or replenish her shield when fighting when dismounted. She needs activity with uptime on abilities. So, Rell's Q used to be really low cooldown. Yes, that is good. Bring it back. I don't like stun being on her Q. Even if they have to get rid of a hard CC ability to make room to give her Q the ability to be used often in a fight, then that would be fantastic. I want to Q. I want to be in combat. I want to feel the effects of those resistances that she's stealing. So when I hit with Q, Give me health or shields. Effective health or shields. And you know what else you can do with that? Because, so, you know, if you want to tie Rell lore into this, people are like, oh no, she's a loner. Like, she doesn't want to be with people. She doesn't want to help people. No, her deal is that she goes out and rescues and protects those kids, like those that she, had, like, subjected to the freaking, like, the Black Rose, and save them. And, like, her dialogue is, she doesn't trust. But just because you don't trust people doesn't mean you don't want to help them. And being able to prop them up while you're keeping that profile is what feels important to you. It's like, you know, when you know, you're working in a kitchen or something, someone's doing something, you do something that they need you to do before they even get the chance to do it. You're helping them up. You don't want to go like, yo, I'm doing this thing for you. Is that alright? Yeah, I love doing this. No, it's, I gotta do this because it's a gap in what you're doing and I know you need it fixed, so I'm just giving you this leg up, you know? But, like, having an ability to provide that which keeps herself alive to others felt great before. Like, to me, Rell feels more like a Tarek-style champion than she does, like, an Alistar-style champion. Or at least she used to. I use Redemption and Locket on her because I still want to have that feeling. But she used to have that feeling, but she doesn't anymore because she is extremely greedy with what her kit provides. And what her kit provides isn't anything that really fits her. And, like, fit the kit. So, she is, again, magnetism focused. She is full, bulky armor. She should be slow when dismounted. Okay, what else should she do when dismounted? Like, she shouldn't have that dead man's effect anymore. It's still perfectly fine to give her power on her basic attacks when she's dismounted. They could be a bit, or well, their scaling would be a bit higher. But, like, and no, when I say mini dead mans, no slow, of course. That would be silly. But when she's dismounted, she needs to be able to fight. But the issue with this is, before the midscope, the issue wasn't, I can't catch up to these enemies, so give me more move speed. Unrestrict my move speed. The thing that Riot missed with their initial fix, though, still, again, was they didn't touch the move speed cap, so people that wanted to move faster when they dismounted weren't actually able to because they were still hitting hard caps. But what they needed to do, and what you could gain from getting rid of the Q stun, is provide slows with her E. She wants enemies to face her. This is what she should be doing. When she crashes down, she's setting a field of space in which she wants to take down her opponent, stop them from running, don't let them get near your allies. So what do you do with that? Shen Q slow effect. When the enemy runs away from Rell, they are slower. They should be slower. But the thing is, you would want to have her passive affecting the target in order to get this procced off. Because magnetism, passive. Good. Let her pull those enemies towards her with increased ferocity based on stacks. Now, something else you could do with that is, hey, they've got so many stacks on them right now that they can't even move. So, you know, you could stun them with that cast of your E. Kind of like Sejuani, there wouldn't be a displacement effect or anything, but you worked for that stun, you know? It's 5 stacks! Have you ever hit 5 stacks on someone at any phase of the game inside of an actual team fight with Rell? Not really. But if you have these tools at your disposal, you just might. And it's not going to hit everyone, more than likely, but it will hit someone, and that someone might be the target that you need. And even if it's not at the high enough stat count that you need to stun them, if they try running towards your AD carry, you slap E onto them when they have, like, that 1 or 2 stacks that you got from the engage, you slow them down. You get over to them, you hit them some, you get them slow again. You can even provide, like, a cooldown refund effect or something every time you hit with your Q, I don't know. But, like, having something like that would feel nice. And then, like, nice in terms of being able to interact with the field. So, before the midscope hit, a lot of the times Rell was feeling weak to people, right? Because, she's all slow, she does no damage, everyone else is dealing insane amounts of damage around her. But those mythic items are gone. Those mythic items were the problems that were hiding the damage output that Rell had. Because, you know why Rell was, like, really freaking strong level 5 and before? Because people didn't have items yet. Those items were so freaking strong. But as soon as they got those items, Rell can't do anything. Well, in the current situation, Rell's damage is freaking garbage, so she can't fight, she can't survive, she can't do crap. Like, she can survive a bit more, but if she had her old kit, she'd be able to actively fight and do stuff and make a difference and not just be a freaking, broken wheel that she's going to become tomorrow. But yeah, on top of all these things, and the stun doesn't even need to be on her E. Again, it could just be like a Shen-esque slow. Apply your passive to people. You can have an individual target or multi-target on the cast. You could have it not affect targets at all that don't have any stacks on them. If you do make it usable and mounted, you could even have it like a similar interaction to whatchamacallit, to how Full Tilt empowers an ally at the moment, except, without giving the move speed. Empower their auto attack with, like, and, this is a split ability thing. They would share a cooldown at that, because that would be too strong. You would make it so you would empower your ally. It would also empower yourself in this situation, where they would be able to shoot the target, and basically it would let you run them down. Again, you don't need move speed on Rell. You just need to be faster than when dismounted. If you give your ally the ability to slow the enemy when moving away from you, then you can catch up to them, you can do your engage setup on them, and set the field to fight. Continue queuing them. And again, back to the Q healing or whatever. You can either make it heal or regenerate your shields, or even have, like, the option to recast it to send the like, your resistances and stuff to an ally, and the shield and heal that you got as well to an ally. Like, that kind of stuff would be so much fun. But then her ultimate, as it is, again, standalone, it's worthless. It's so worthless, except for a few situations where you're just trying to interrupt some enemy's mobility. It doesn't feel like an ultimate. And not only that, if you compare it to other, like, mass scale alts, what do you have? A Moo, which has knockdown effect, a relatively decent stun, a large AoE, and it applies as passive, which amplifies magic damage being dealt to enemies or augments magic damage being dealt to enemies with 10% true damage. That 10% true damage is miles above anything that Rell can permit onto her targets that are being hit with the shield stealing that's available to her. Like, the way that they have it calculated is basically anytime you auto, like, once or twice, you're stealing, like, 1% of damage mitigation from the target. That's kind of like how the calculation works out to be. But it's, again, kind of worthless in the long run, because for you, those stats are meaningless because of the point in the game where or in the early phase of the game, it's kind of pointless because, like, the damage values are so low that you're not really making use out of such small stealing numbers. you'll be heavily poked out before anything actually useful even comes of it. Even with the damage being added on, until you get 5 stacks, you're just poking for 3 damage, and then you move up to 4 damage at 5 stacks. It's crazy. But yeah, back to her ultimate. You could attribute the stun portion that I discussed earlier, of a possible 5 stack of passive application onto her ultimate. But instead of making it like the small dragging field, make it like a notably large field. Think of something akin to like a Kennen ult, but you could make it static. It would be perfectly fine if it's static. But just make it a field that slowly applies like a Rell stack to it. And then every stack that is applied to an enemy will increase the drag speed towards Rell for anyone that's inside of it, you know? And like it's very disruptive if you were to do that. And then again, when it gets to the full stack, you could you could just make it where when an enemy hits 5 stacks, they get tugged to you like the current ult does. It would fix a lot of the problems of Rell being a massive coin flip champion. It would fix the problem of Rell not really being able to interact with champions much at the moment. It would fix the problem of her Q being unhealthy, because as it stands, the direction that Rell's Q is heading is going to be the removal of the Q flash from it, because that's the only way that they're going to see Rell being able to get much of the power that she's going to be losing when the freak changes are going to be going through. And the larger AoE you can even of the ultimate that I'm proposing would even be scalable with like rank, even to make it so if Rell sits at like level 9 the entire game, that it won't be as effective. It will actually provide value to it. Or you can have it scale with level, you know, until level 13 like a lot of other tank scalings are. Larger AoE, eventual passive interactivity. Maybe at 5. You know, reward the Rell player for sticking it out. Like those resistances that she will get, again, if you supplement them with healing or shielding applying with her Q, even if like her Q gets augmented stealing and whatnot upon breaking a shield, which is kind of iffy in terms of how much power it would give, because shields being prevalent in items compounded with enchanters and a lot of bruiser kits they're adding it onto and stuff. Who knows how much power that gives. But if changes akin to this were done, removal of full tilt, tons of open power. Because if you shift to dismounted focused gameplay, that means that like her horse form is supplementary to what she can do when she's landed, and that's where the feeling wants to be, at least in my opinion. I wish that other people would agree with me, but it's really hard to speak my point into people that just kind of want to listen to the biggest word and disregard the words of people that have played a champion for like 1,000 times in favor of people that have played it 10 times, went, oh, icky, and then left. Of Q stun, even more open power. Slowed down dismount, more open power. Slows low power budget. Heals and shields, low power budget. Those mean that you can apply more strength to passive, apply more strength to ultimate, and honestly, yeah, that's the goal that I want. But I know that we're not going to get it, because it's not really gonna make sense to people that haven't actively played her for excessive periods of time, and that makes me pretty sad. I don't have any intent on continuing playing Rell after this unless they give her the changes that she needs. Because otherwise she's not going to be a better pick than anything, really. Like, even if you're going into a composition that you would need shield breaking, you're just better off taking Blitzcrank. Uh, or any champion that can actually delay it for long enough stretches of time. But I've had my say. Again, if anyone listened to anything at all, thank you for watching. I'll see if I can timestamp anything. I miss old Rell. I miss OG Karma. Bye.